So thank you everyone for coming to this session. We know there's a lot of competition all at once, so thanks for joining us. Before we start, can we just get a show of hands who's in the audience? So if you are a kind of executive director leadership in your organization, like senior executive, raise your hand. Okay, great. How many, anybody from government? Excellent. How many of you already serve a criminal justice involved population? Super. Substance use. Mental health. Other. Excellent.
That's a trick question.
We got everybody here.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we're here today to talk about the Justice Involved Supportive Housing program that's been up and running for over a year and a half now in New York City. I'm Kristin Miller, and I'm director of the Metro team for Corporation for Supportive Housing. CSH has been around for about 25 years. We started in New York City, and now we're national. We work in over 35 states across the country, and we have offices located in 19 different states. And what is, I think, a lot of fun and unique about our work is that we are able to take local, new initiatives, new experiments, new risks that are happening across the country and bring them national. So we can say, you know, in Nashville, Tennessee, they're doing this really neat initiative, and we can bring it local and see if we think it would work where we are locally. And we bring that to the folks who work on a national basis, including our federal government. So we're able to kind of inform up and inform down and inform across, which is, I think, the greatest pleasure I have in my work. We have here a great panel of speakers, and I'll just do a quick introduction down the line. Next to me is Jennifer Scaife, who's from the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. Next to her is Carolyn, who's representing the Fortune Society. Angela Delgado is from CAMBA. Ian Alcazar is from Urban Pathways. And Rebecca Sievers is from DOH-MH. And each of them are going to give their perspective and a different piece of the work that has gone into JISH, what we call JISH, Justice Involved Supportive Housing. Before we go there, though, I just want to give a little overview. As you know, everybody in the room here knows, homelessness is an institutional circuit. To really solve homelessness, you can't just look at the shelter system, right? All of the folks that you work with every day are involved in jail, detox, emergency room. They may be on the street. They may be in medical hospital or psych hospital. They also may be or should be in drug treatment, right? So where we like to focus our work is looking across systems. So you're really meeting the needs of the whole person. And what we find is that this approach not only improves outcomes for the individual we're working with, but it improves outcomes for each of those systems. So the emergency room doctor who sees the same person every few weeks, they're intoxicated, they have lots of physical health issues, they literally put a Band-Aid on them in the emergency department, give them their script, and off they go, right? So they're just treating that piece of the individual at that moment. The jails, they're treating that person at that moment. The detox center, right? You get it. So the point of something like Justice Involved Supportive Housing is that we're targeting people based on how they are using these many, many systems. And HUD agrees with this. The U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness last August said, in order to end homelessness, we must reduce the number of people who enter the criminal justice system from homelessness and prevent homelessness among people leaving the criminal justice system. How can we stop the revolving door for the folks that we serve every day. So in the mid-2000s, CSH started to work with the Department of Homeless Services and Department of Correction to say, who are your frequent utilizers of both jail and shelter? And this resulted in what many of you have heard of perhaps called the FUSE initiative, Frequent Users Systems Engagement, right? And I'll get to the success of that program in a minute, but an overview of FUSE is that the way you're going to stop this vicious cycle, if you will, of the clients moving and coming and going and coming and going is using data to help identify, engage, right, that's a key piece, and engage the individuals who are high utilizers of public systems and place them into supportive housing. When they're cycling round and round, it's a very costly, in addition to poor outcomes, it costs a whole lot of money to serve these people in this duplicated manner. And there are essentially three pillars of FUSE that you'll see here. You have to look at your data, which is getting government typically to analyze its data across systems, which helps us really understand which problem we're trying to solve, understand the people that we're trying to serve better. We need policy and systems reform once we understand those problems and needs, the gaps and services, which allows for the systems reform. And then we need to target the housing and services. And just in the opening speakers today, we have far more demand than we have supply. So how do we figure out how to reach the most vulnerable, the most needy, and we're going to use this a lot, but we don't mean to be cold, it's just a practical way, the most expensive people in our community. And if we can provide supportive housing to them, it's a cheaper solution than cycling round and round and round. So we partnered with all of those organizations, including, and in addition, that I mentioned, Department of Homeless Services, Department of Corrections, HPD, DOH-MH, NYCHA, and HRA to implement the initial FUSE initiative in New York City. And we were able to work with Columbia University's Mailman School of Public Health to understand, does this really work, to evaluate the program. And we were able to look at the pre and post usage of these multiple systems for the individuals pre the intervention of supportive housing and post intervention, so before and after they moved into the supportive housing. And we were able to come up with a comparison group. So if we provided supportive housing to these folks, what happened to those who were eligible but didn't get into that housing? Again, it was a very limited number. And in fact, we found it worked. The jail days were lower over 24 months after, so 2 years after the housing placement, the FUSE participants averaged 29 jail days versus 48 jail days to the comparison group. They stayed housed. They were at 2 years, 86% still remained in their permanent supportive housing. And the shelter use declined dramatically. The FUSE participants averaged 15 days in shelters in the 2 months after they were placed into the FUSE housing, compared to the comparison group, which averaged 162 days in shelter over the same period. So a huge decrease in the shelter and jail use. FUSE participants averaged just over 2 weeks of shelter stays in the 24 months after placement as compared to these 164. And when we added up all these costs, it was about $15,000 per person savings. And this was a very modest look at the cost savings. We didn't, for example, have Medicaid data. Now, if you looked at that, if you think of detox and emergency room and all that stuff, we know the numbers would be much higher, meaning the savings would be much higher. So this FUSE initiative, we were able to prove like it really works, and now we are implementing FUSE in over 35 communities across the country. Some of them are focused on jail and shelter. Some of them are on hospital use and shelter, and some of them are all three. So you can see from this map how New York City started something and the rest of the world picked it up, which we were great. But the FUSE initiative, unfortunately, when that research came out, sequestration had hit. and we needed some way to pay for the housing, right? And so Fuse, we didn't continue to add beds to the New York City Fuse Initiative until we have our group of people here. So under Mayor de Blasio, we were able to get the Justice-Involved Supportive Housing, which is, again, a targeted, we looked at our data, and a very targeted way of getting people into the supportive housing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer, and she can talk about our current initiative.
Great, good morning. I'm Jennifer Scaife. I work at the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. And MOCJ is what we call our office, is the Mayor's Chief Advisor on Public Safety and Criminal Justice Policy in the city. And we also run a number of services and programs via contract for diversion, crime prevention, indigent defense, and a range of other criminal justice services in the city. The focus of our office is decreasing crime, reducing the use of unnecessary incarceration, and increasing fairness or procedural justice in the criminal justice system. And now that it is the city's official policy to close Rikers in 10 years, we are focused more than ever on identifying ways to safely reduce the jail population and create opportunities for people to be held accountable and receive services in the community. One of the strategies that we hold up as key for, for reducing unnecessary incarceration and connecting people to needed services is our Justice-Involved Supportive Housing Program, which came out of the recommendations that were advanced to the mayor by the Mayor's Task Force on Behavioral Health in the Criminal Justice System, which started in 2014. Again, like Kristin said, is a program that targets people with cross-system involvement. So frequent use of jail, use of shelter, and use of public health emergency services. Our partners on the Justice-Involved, or JISH, initiative are the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, Department of Homeless Services, now DSS, Department of Correction, Corporation for Supportive Housing, and of course our partners here, the providers who are with me on the panel. So I'm saying things, I think, in the next couple of slides that many of you know through your experience and observation, but I think it bears repeating that this is a group that has cross-system involvement, and as Kristin said, are being served simultaneously and duplicatively often by multiple public systems. They tend to face low-level misdemeanor charges and have lengthy criminal justice involvement over the course of their lives. They tend to cycle through jail for short periods of time and have significant behavioral health needs, including substance use. And obviously have struggled often for many years going back into their childhood with homelessness. They also tend to be older than the average jail population, so an average age of about 47. And again, I think that this is information that you know, but in government we're often really interested in quantifying the impact, right, of these programs, and this helps us advocate for additional resources. And so I just want to reinforce how effective we know supportive housing is for this population through fewer returns to jail, less use of shelter, and improved health outcomes. And these numbers in particular were informed by the Fuse evaluation that Kristin mentioned, and I'll talk in a few minutes about our forthcoming efforts to evaluate and document the impact of our program, again, so that we can continue to advocate for a citywide policy for supportive housing as one important intervention for this population. I made this slide last week, and since then 2 additional people have been placed into housing, so we're up to 104 individuals, and I'll tell you how we got to where we are in just a second in terms of identifying those individuals. But our estimated cost savings to the city is about $1.5 million per year. So in order to identify which people would be selected for housing, whereas in some programs it's a first come, first serve selection, right? If you're eligible, you apply, and then you're served as a unit is made available. In this case, we conducted a data match between the Department of Homeless Services and the Department of Correction data sets over a 4-year period, and looked at individuals who had at least 5 admissions to jail and shelter over that 4-year period. And so that was the floor, and we found about 1,500 people who met that baseline eligibility criteria, and then we took the top 400. And so you can imagine that if that's the minimum criteria, that the people at the top of the list had many more jail and shelter admissions than just 5. So in some cases, well over 20 admissions in a 4-year period. And then in order, again, to create a somewhat rigorous evaluation methodology, we randomly selected a treatment group of 200 individuals who would be identified for housing, and then the other group would serve as the control group for the purposes of our evaluation. And so then that's how we got, so we've been working our way through this list, and Rebecca, my colleague from DOHMH, will talk a little bit more in depth about how providers and how our respective agencies go about identifying those individuals. But since the program began in November 2015, until now, we've placed 104 people into permanent homes. And then as we move forward, we're interested in, like I said, evaluating and documenting our impact. So we have we have 2 methodologies that we're going to use in order to get at some of our successes and also help understand some of the challenges in serving this group of people. So we're going to do a quantitative evaluation that looks at and draws on administrative data to look at recidivism, homeless service utilization, health system utilization, and also try to identify what kinds of population subgroups or typologies, what kinds of people might be served better, or to inform future targeting and new approaches. But we're also, and this is the one that is close to my heart, we're also really interested in the life courses and the trajectories of people who find themselves frequent users of jail and shelter, and so what are some of their experiences that bring them to this place in their lives, and how are their perspectives changed, and what are their reflections, right, on their path to permanent supportive housing. So we're going to do a bit of an ethnographic research process through focus groups and maybe interviews, and we'll be partnering with an external research partner to work with us on that part of the evaluation. So more to come.
Great. Thanks, Jen. One thing I'll note is that it's so great to see this evolution. The original fuse was a 4-4-5, so 4 jail stays, 4 shelter stays in 5 years. But we realized we needed to do deeper targeting, so you just started at the 5-5, and then that even was, we needed to go deeper to get to the 400. So it really shows you the frequency of the use that we're talking about. And another way to look at it, I think, is that we're really targeting the most vulnerable of the most vulnerable within this population. I'll just do a quick overview so you have a good perspective on how this all worked. You can see that this is the roles of the service providers and kind of how it works. So DOHMH assigns a potential client to one of the 3 agencies you're going to hear from. And then this is a fast-moving project, right? The idea is, and I mean this in the best way, the most loving way, get them while you can, get them as quickly as you can, don't lose that client, right? And meet them as soon as possible face-to-face, and they get assigned their case manager ASAP. And that's really, really key, working with this population. You can't lose them.
Yeah.
And then continued is that the beauty of this, and you're going to hear more about it, is they're given an apartment. It's housing first. You get the apartment, again, ASAP.
Yeah.
ASAP. And then there's a minimum meeting time, face-to-face contact with the tenants, and the importance is linking into services like supportive housing. So it's just generally how it worked, and I'll just add that we've been supporting each other through this process, and CSH hosts a monthly learning collaborative to bring in past learning. There are other communities doing this kind of initiative. What can we learn from them? And very importantly, share with each other, because there's uniqueness to New York. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Slade.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Carolyn Slade. I'm with the Fortune Society, and I oversee the Justice Involved Supportive Housing Program. As discussed, one of the things that happens is the clients are referred to us. So once we receive a referral, one of the things that we do is we reach out to the Department of Homeless Services, we reach out to the Department of Corrections, we look at hospitals, and we do diligent searches to actually locate the referrals. And that's all in a 2-day period. Once we locate the person, then we ask them to come into the program, which is hopefully on the 5th day, and we speak to them and introduce them in terms of what the program actually is. A lot of times the clients come into our program, they're very reluctant to interact because it's immediate housing. So how many people get immediate housing as soon as you come in or as soon as you hear about it? And in addition to that, a lot of clients have been homeless for a considerable period of time, so just having additional responsibilities and knowing that you're going to be housed can kind of be a little just provide a level of anxiety for that particular person. So one of the things that we do in terms of providing a collaborative effort and just bringing the client in and meeting with them is that the entire team actually meets with the client, and we speak with them so that they'll know that they'll not only have housing, but they in addition would have case management along with support services within the community. And I do want to say that my particular case managers are here in the front, so I want to say hello to them and thank you, because they're very, this is a challenging program, and they do their due diligence in trying to locate our clients. So once the clients come in and they meet with everyone, one of the things that we actually talk about is how they were selected and identified to participate in the program in terms of, how they became eligible. We talk about, again, the services within Fortune Society in terms of our court advocacy, our employment, vocational service, better living center, family, nutritional service. So we have additional services within the Fortune Society that is conducive with their housing and level of stability. So again, it's housing first and get the client stable within an apartment, and then we could connect them to the various services. Now, once that client actually accepts services, one of the things that we do is a comprehensive assessment. And one of the reasons why we do this assessment is because we want to really look at the risk factors and barriers that may be causing them to relapse. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about the quiz.
Made those nice slides.
Okay, so we want to look at the risk factors and kind of talk about some of the barriers that they've faced in the past in terms of relapsing and their medical conditions, and we look at this psychiatric history, whether they've been hospitalized for a long or short period of time, whether they've been evaluated, placed on any psychotropic medication, any suicide ideations, any behaviors that may cause concern within the community. So those are some of the things that actually occurs within this particular program. And again, once they accept services, now we have to look at what type of benefits do they have in place. Are they receiving their HRA benefits? Are they receiving SSI, SSD? We do have a couple who are employed. But if a lot of our clients are coming out of Rikers Island from being detained, so their benefits are not activated. So one of the things we do is we have recovery peer specialists who actually escort our clients to various appointments. And one of the things that we do immediate is we take them to intake, then we take them to HRA and either have them apply for their benefits, whether it's cash assistance, medical, or both, or all three, medical, cash, and SNAPs. And it's a 45-day process period if that particular person benefits are not activated. So one of the things, we still house them. We don't allow that to deter us from housing, because once they're housed, we'll get that rent paid eventually once, they become stabilized. So we go ahead and we actually, once we identify an apartment for this client, and the clients are pretty much housed within the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Far Rockaway. We may have like two, Manhattan's just not affordable. So we may have like maybe 4 apartments within Manhattan that we're working with. So we actually, before they move into their apartment, we actually have a tool called the Alcazar system, and it actually looks at various domains. It's about 10 domains, and we look at the legal aspect of things, the mental health aspect, the self-care aspect of things, looking at adult living skills, mental health, and we formulate a service plan which has goals and objectives for the client to meet during a certain quarter. We also take them to their apartment. We give them startup kits, which, has your basic dishes, pots, pans, mops, brooms, so forth and so on. We provide a table with 2 chairs, bed, dresser, sofa, and a 25-inch screen TV. I just wanted to see who was paying attention. We do not give them 25-inch television. But
that's a good engagement.
It's an engagement, but we do.
Said 55.
Then everybody would have woke up. But one of the
Boss is in the audience.
okay. So one of the things also is not just placing them in housing, but remember, these are clients who have been homeless, some for 25 years, longer, so forth and so on. So their ADL skills are very, very limited. So some of the things that the case managers and the recovery specialists do are try to acclimate that person to their actual community with just showing them the local grocery store, showing them how to read a circular, showing them where the local laundromat is, food pantry, and including showing them how to shop and complete their laundry. Because believe it or not, a lot of people don't know how to do the basic in terms of separating colors from whites. So sometimes you have to start from the foundation and kind of work your way up in terms of assisting our clients. So another thing we do in terms of locating food pantries, and then most importantly, in terms of their service plans, we want to make sure that we're implementing the fact that they have a mental health provider, medical providers, linking them to substance treatments within their community. Although Fortune Society has a lot of these programs within, one of the things we really try to do is try to get the clients into a program within their community, because then they don't have to focus on, okay, where am I going to get the transportation to go to my appointment? NA programs, AA programs, substance abuse programs, they're readily available within the community, and we've actually identified, and we actually have actually a binder of programs located in each boroughs that we can refer our clients to prior to moving them in their apartment. So I forgot, I'm on the time frame. So I have to rush and do this, but one of the things, again, we have 4 case managers, and we have 2 peer specialists, and each client is assigned a case manager and a peer specialist. And in the event, let's say that case manager or peer specialist is out, we have another case manager who is readily available to assist that person in the event of emergencies and things of that nature. We have at least 4 contacts a month, which is minimal. So we do 2 home visits, we do 1 individual counseling session, and we have multiple phone calls with the clients to assist them, whichever area needs to be assisted with. We also have group activities within our program where we have community meetings monthly, and during the community meetings, our clients have input into how they're actually interacting with their case managers, problems within their community, problems within the household, and they're able to talk to their case manager during those home visits, but the community meetings kind of opens a forum for other clients to kind of engage with one another and see some similarities and, understand that it's not just them who's, it's challenging getting acclimated to apartments. So the community meetings is to educate them, to assist them, and have a dialogue. We also have men's group for our clients and a women's group to discuss domestic violence. We also make sure that our team of case managers are educated in terms of providing services to our clients. We send them to an 8-module behavioral workshop with CUCS. We have multiple trainings in terms of cultural competency, motivated interviewing, trauma-informed care, things of that nature. And again, when they're meeting with our clients and we see that additional support services or a higher level of support services are deemed necessary, we have that involved also. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Delgado, and I work for CAMBA. And I was given the beautiful job of finding apartments, which, we all know how easy it is. So now that Carolyn has all the clients, we have to go and find apartments. CAMBA operates about 665 units of supported housing. I mean, I can talk about the experience because I have been with the agency for 29 years. So I saw, the first supported housing programs, and I can tell you about how easy it was to find an apartment because you will discuss with your landlords what having an apartment in the agency's name was and how guaranteed their payments were, and they will jump on the opportunity. Who wants to deal with the hassle of having to, go after, the clients when they don't pay their money, right? Well, that has changed. Now it's like, begging and there is the vacancy rate is very low, and the landlords became very smart, and they're having a difficult time, providing apartments to. So. The Justice Involved Supported Housing Program was our new addition to the supported housing. It's 30 units of housing for individuals that are circling in and out of the shelter and Rikers, so in and out of jail. We started on October 15, 2015, so it's about 2.5 years. Private market landlords are critical to the success of all the set-aside housing programs. They play an important role in achieving the goal of ending homeless in New York City. So therefore, developing a very strong relationship with our landlords is very important, not only to keep current units, but also to get additional units. What is the benefit of the landlords renting the units to an agency? Well, their monthly rent is secure. They cannot say that the agency is going to fall behind in their payments. replacement or payment of destruction of property. If something is damaged in the apartment and is due to our clients' damage in the property, the agency can cover the cost of replacing or repairing the unit. They don't have to spend money because there will not be no rental arrears, therefore they don't have to go through an eviction. Sometimes, the agencies can pay broker's fees in order to get apartments. And the benefits is that, the landlord has less interaction with the tenant or with the client because they know that the agency has case management services, that every client is assigned a case manager that is responsible for working with that client to address any issues, including behavioral issues. The agency has a maintenance staff that can do minor repairs that don't have to, involve the super or the management company. They know that we will, as soon as we know of any issues with our clients, that we will go there to try to address the issue so they don't have to become involved. So how do we engage? We engage the landlords by sending them letters explaining who we are and the services that we provide, and invite them to come and meet the team. I think it's very important to put a face, to that phone call. Who am I going to be working with, and what are the services that you are going to provide to your clients that are going to be housed within my units? Meeting them is very important. Explaining the process of renting to agencies from master leasing and subleasing, and try and educate them on what that means. Of course, respond quickly to any concerns, to any complaints that they have. I think that that relationship is stronger when they know that every time that they call you, you go into the site and addressing the issue and give them feedback about how the issue is being resolved. As the landlords, we're always asking our landlords to recommend us to other landlords, in order for us to get more units. So in 2010, 90% of our units were all in Brooklyn. And right now, we have in this program, what the JISH program did for us is having to reach out to different boroughs. Brooklyn was becoming very expensive. There were no units to be rented, so we had to venture to the Bronx. So out of the 30 units that we have, 28 are now located in the Bronx. What does that mean for an agency that has that our office is located in Brooklyn? A lot of time it takes to go and visit clients. It takes 2 hours. It's an entire day kind of venture. Staff time and also clients' time when they have to come to the office. Some of the challenges for supported housing units, is the destabilization of affordable housing, because nonprofits do not have any rent stabilization protections. We are competing with so many other nonprofits that are doing the same thing. They are providing supported housing, so we are all in competition with each other, competing for, very few apartments that are available right now. The rental costs right now, the landlords do not want to rent for the amount of money that agencies have to provide this level of housing. They know that they can get more money in the private market, so therefore, you have less and less units available to provide supported housing units. as I mentioned, apartments could be in multiple boroughs. That increases the travel time for staff and clients. Program buildings, we are it's not only CAMBA that is renting in that building, it's also the Fortune Society. So there are multiple agencies renting out of the same landlord, the same building. So this one building can be a program building because it could be multiple programs renting from that landlord. What do we get? I mean, I think that we get poorly maintained buildings, apartments in higher floors that nobody else wants to rent. So those are the things that we deal with now with the housing stock being so low. And one of the important things about finding units is identifying the proper staff that will be able to sell the program to the landlord. We always say that this business is kind of sales. You need to find the staff member that is able to communicate with the landlord, being able to sell the agency and the benefits of renting. So training the housing specialist or whoever is going to be responsible for identifying and working with the landlords is very important.
Great, thank you. It's such a fascinating predicament that we've created here because of the market. And thank you so much for talking about it, because we have so much stuff coming out of that scattered site, but we in this room are competing for the same few market, the available apartments on the market, right? And this phenomena of you have 10 units in a building, you have 10 units in a building, you have 10 units in a building, and pretty soon it's a congregate site just run by different providers. And where's the efficiency there? So it really is kind of troubling to think about, but it is the reality of a tight housing market like New York. So thank you. Okay, Ian.
Sure.
Good.
Yeah. Good morning. So, to paint a brief picture of the process for referring a client to one of our JISH beds, or Justice Involved Supportive Housing beds, there are multiple organizations that can be involved in the placement of one client. There's DOHMH, which is my right over here, the Office of Housing Services, Rebecca Sievers. They are the folks who specifically drive the project. They're sort of the keepers and the folks who monitor the service standards for JISH. There's also, hold on, I didn't do the thing. So that's the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. There's the New York City Health and Hospitals at Rikers Island. These are the folks who are primarily making the referrals to us at Urban Pathways. They have the unenviable task of navigating the systems of the Department of Corrections, so it's in our best interest to connect with them well and to make sure that their needs are being met, because it is difficult to go through that discharge process over at Rikers Island. And then also the New York City Department of Homeless Services, also a primary referring to us. So I feel the key to success to any project is the relationship building. That has to happen between all of these involved parties. And from the first moments that we got involved with JISH, it was important for us to understand the significance of this project and the importance of connecting with our external stakeholders and cultivating those relationships. So the theme that you're going to hear me talk about consistently throughout this presentation, I think you're going to hear it from the folks here too, and you have already, is engagement and communication and collaboration, and all in an effort to place these clients, these individuals who need our help, quickly, swiftly, like Kristin said, to a house, to a home, to a place where they can be well and get the services that they need. So again, the key all along, like I said, has been engagement. It's about, I call it communication, communication, and communication. The project was new about a year and a half ago, so we knew that a lot could go wrong if collaboration was not emphasized. So effectiveness of the relationship building was very, very important. There was the relationship Urban Pathways had to have, again, with the Office of Housing Services, also with the referral staff at H&H at Rikers Island, and also with DHS. So again, timely and meaningful communication is extremely important. Efficient service coordination is also very important, and what I mean by that is there has to be a seamless handoff of the client between all of the involved parties. Seamless in that, you know, the clients that we're working with have been invisible, have been marginalized for a long time, cycling in and out of the shelter and the you know, the jail system, the prison system, and so they understandably go through a period of mistrust about what it is that, you know, that we're offering to them, even if we're trying to help. So it's not uncommon for us to connect with the clients and for them to say, you know, why do you want to help me? What is this? What's in this for you? You know, not really understanding that there's really not very much in this for us other than, you know, getting involved in this panel. But also that this is really about helping them. So in this seamless continuity, we really had to make sure that we picked the right staff to be able to engage the clients. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. So such service coordination could include the real-time conversations that we're having with the referral staff at Rikers Island, you know, coordinating even the transportation. How do they get from being discharged at Rikers to, you know, to Urban Pathways office at Kelly Street, and then to their apartment. And if any of that can go wrong, that provides uncertainty, and at any point, any of the clients can back out. And we don't want that. You know, we want to provide a real, an opportunity for them to get well, to get the independence that they really need, and the, you know, self-sustainability. So, dedicated and effective service delivery, it speaks for itself. I think the work that we're trying to do with our clients really speaks to how much compassion and how much care we must have for them, and that has to show in the work that we're doing. And again, the key there is the relationship building between all the different providers and organizations here, and most importantly with Rebecca to my right, kissing butt a little bit. Because she is someone who's very important in this, and OHS is very important in this process. Adapting quickly to change, I think this was mentioned before, we don't stand on ceremony. We developed a culture of opportunity and flexibility. You know, if plans change at any moment with a referral of a client, we bend like a reed in the wind. Where's that line from? Nobody knows? Because I'm old, right? It's Tron. All right, so we have to bend like a reed in the wind. So at any moment, if anything changes, we really have to be able to say, hey, that happens, now we're going to move forward in a different way. Ready to act at a moment's notice. So, and again, all that is about capitalizing on the opportunity of getting the client in to one of our apartments.
Looks like well, it's we're on the road show.
Oh, wow.
Test 1, 2.
All right.
That's my presentation.
I thought that was Tron.
No, that wasn't me. Yeah, that was probably Tron. That's right. So, Kristin knew what I was talking about. So again, the focus. Again.
Ben like a reed.
Yeah. Okay. So again,
That's it.
I'm done.
You're done.
I was in a couple weeks, right? Well, it's not. It doesn't really work that way. The road show started this week. It started yesterday. And so we've got a couple of weeks here, which we're meeting the investor community, and the goal. The process is informal, and it's the next couple of weeks we're doing the walk-up to the actual trading.
Geez, if you want, can you get off?
What is happening? It's weird.
Here's the man. All right.
All right.
Okay. Can we just turn off the mic? Perfect. Okay. Bending like the reed. Go, Ian.
Okay, so bending like a reed in the wind. So to the next slide, which is a continuation of engagement, we really did have to focus
gotta
on.
shout, though.
We really wanted to make sure that we had to focus on seamless client handoff, and I think I've said that like 3 or 4 times. Highlighted by meaningful real-time conversations. So the conversations we're having with the Rikers Island staff, with Leah Hain, who's the director of the program, and her staff, it's really about building relationships. You know, Leah Hain and I were talking about what our plans are for this past weekend, not together. So this is sort of like where we're going. It's like building the relationship. So that when I give Leah a call and say, look, I know you've got somebody for us. You know, how can we go on to next steps? She's someone who understands this doesn't have to be someone that has to go through all these steps. Let's move this forward very quickly. So who benefits? We call this the quadruple win. And what I mean by that is there are 4 entities that are involved in this process, right? One is like I mentioned, DOH-MH is ensured that qualitative client services are being met satisfactorily as per OPRA and scope of work standards. H&H and DHS, our primary referents, are ensured a seamless and well-planned client handoff that includes the coordination of outreach, admission, and also transportation, like I mentioned. Urban Pathways gets to continue to enhance its mission to help individuals move their lives to independence and self-sustainability. And most importantly, and last but not least, the resilient men and women who have cycled through jail, shelters, and the streets are finally connected to permanent supportive housing through this program. The JISH approach has been shown to reduce returns to jail by 38%, saving thousands of dollars annually per individual in jail, shelter, and emergency room costs. And if you don't believe me, go to the DOH-MH website, because that's where I stole that from. Deanne?
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. So now Rebecca is going to give us what we've all been waiting for, which are numbers. The numbers. There we go. The outcomes.
Thanks. Can everybody hear me? I'm pretty good at emote. Let me know, just wave at me if I'm shouting. I just want to thank Jennifer, Carolyn, Angelise, Ian, Kristin from CSH. This JISH work has really been, it's unique, it's innovative, but it's also really hard. These folks can, in the front here, can probably attest to that. So starting with the list that Jennifer talked about, we had a list of 200 people. We later added 50 more to that list. I basically was given that list and said, go find them and assign them and get them housed. So long story short, we developed those relationships that have been talked about with H&H, Health and Hospitals, the folks at Rikers, and with DHS, which is now DSS, of course. So to date, we have 193 people have been referred, 104 housed, and hopefully a few more soon. 65 people that were referred were not housed. We've had some move-outs, and then there's a handful we're still engaging, and perhaps some more referrals coming down the pike to fill these last few beds. From that list of 200, those individuals had an average of 382 days in jail over that 4-year period. Most of those were the short stays that were mentioned before, and also an average of 220 days in shelter. So you can really see that these are high service utilizers. For those folks that were not housed, we couldn't locate some. The case managers, the providers do a lot of outreach. Some folks did end up going to long-term prison. A handful of folks just were not eligible. I think they were also very hard to find for whatever reason. They didn't have an income. They weren't eligible for benefits. You can see that 20 people refused services, and those are the folks that were kind of like, wow, you know, somebody just came up to me in jail or shelter and said, do you want an apartment? And they were kind of like, from the stories I hear from you guys.
That's right.
And, you know, some folks that already found housing, there were a few other reasons, such as medical reasons, people moved out of the area. We currently have 104 housed. We did have 11 move-outs. Again, the long-term prison for folks that, you know, that just got involved in the wrong things. A handful of folks abandoned the apartment. The case managers and the providers do the diligent search and outreach, couldn't catch up with them. One person went away to long-term treatment, and we had one death from chronic medical illness that the person came into the program with. But overall, we have a 90% retention rate, which is pretty amazing. The rapid housing placement, that's what's so exciting about this model. These numbers are from the program inception in October 2015 to the end of 2016. The end of 2016, we had 92 residents. So from referral to accepting services, it's 67 days. And then once somebody says, yes, I'm interested in your housing, we have them in an apartment within 9 days. GISH staff make an average of about 11 outreach attempts, but that range is 1 to 57 outreach attempts just to get them to accept services and to move in. So there is a lot of work that's going on there. The 2010E process, this is from the 2013 Rapid Results Boot Camp. It can take, it's a 24-step process. GISH, we have about 5 steps and about 314 days to placement. You know, on the other hand, though, with the 2010E, folks are coming in with assessments, vouchers when needed. They might have their entitlements in place. That can be a real benefit. Folks know who's coming in, but with this population, they're so transient, so hard to get a hold of, so hard to kind of engage, that just, you know, moving them in without all that stuff happening up front, I think has been a real benefit to this, these folks that we've housed. So just a little bit about who we have in our housing now. You can see the age ranges. Again, we have many folks that are over 45, some over 65. The average range of those we currently have housed is 45.5 years. Gender, we have predominantly male, female, and some transgender. I think we actually have more than 2. And then the race and ethnicity, majority black, not Hispanic, Hispanic, white, not Hispanic, and other. I think there's probably a lot of things that can be said here about health equity and social justice. That's another conversation down the line. And then the intensive work and connection to services. This is also really exciting. This is preliminary data. We're still working on the year-end report. We're going to be working collaboratively with MOCJ on the program evaluation, the more formal evaluation. But just to emphasize the hard work that's going into this, 73% are connected to Medicaid. In 2016, 68% were connected to substance use treatment, 74% were connected to mental health treatment. We don't know completion rates, but we know that those connections and linkages are getting made. 25% visited an emergency room. About 14% had a stay in a hospital of at least 1 night. I think as we move forward with the evaluation, we can look a little bit about what was going on in their lives before being housed and what happened later. When the tenants aren't contacted, there's a lot of diligent search that's going on. The outreach and case management contacts are much higher than in a regular scatter site program. It's supposed to be once a week contact. I think it's a lot higher. Everybody's nodding. We've only had 4 people or 5 people spending any time in shelter at all since they moved in. One of those was for a day, one for a week, two for about a month. One they're still engaging to return to housing. And we have about 60% of the folks have not had a rearrest. We're working, and I think that's in line with the Fuse numbers as well. So our commissioner in a press release did point out this is a real great innovation. We used a lot of data up front to pre-qualify people. They just had to have the stays in shelter, the stays in jail, and a self-reported or by assessment mental health or substance use disorder. This rapid placement process, plus the intense services, really demonstrates that these folks with these long histories can succeed in permanent housing, and I think it's going to really illustrate the stories that we're going to hear about next.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. No, Mike. So just to put a fine point on this, to reiterate a highlight here is, if I got this right, Rebecca, the people who were housed, these 104 people, had an average of 382 jail days and 220 shelter days, right? We found them, we worked very hard to engage them and get them into their supportive housing, which resulted in a 90% retention rate. So only 10% of the people left their housing for various reasons. About 60% had zero arrests. So they went from an average of 382 jail days to 0. And 95% of them didn't touch shelter, whereas there were 220 days beforehand, average. I mean, that's incredible when you really look at the before and after, and shows the power of this targeting, this really, really going out and very actively, collectively, collaboratively identifying folks and immediately getting them into housing. So I think, those are we're going to just do one quick round robin and then open it up for questions. But I wanted you to hear, so you've heard some of the challenges, but this is really messy, tough work with this population in particular, right? And we got together regularly as part of our learning collaborative, and part of it was just support group for us, because we were learning as we were going, and it was particularly challenging. But with that was letting our hair down about the hard part, but also really sharing some success stories. So I wanted each of you to talk about one brief, powerful or meaningful experience you had working with JISH. And then we're going to open up for questions. So, Jennifer, anything you want to say? What's your wow? We'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Rebecca.
I think the wow is just the work that these guys are doing, and I wish that your case managers were here as well, and it's just going to hang out with these guys and meeting the folks that move in and the tenants and their stories. It's, I'm literally come look at these kids. So it's really kind of cool. I know there's a lot of challenges, a lot of things that are like, oh, excuse me, shit. But yeah, it's been pretty neat.
Ian.
I think there are a lot of wows.
Yeah.
We see it every day when we interact with the clients at JISH. One in particular is a woman, I'll call her YG, who was someone who had been cycling, again, through incarceration and shelters and homelessness. Someone who has, like I said before, felt very invisible and marginalized by the general public, and so had a deep sense of mistrust when we were reaching out to her. She's 54 years old now, former heavy cocaine crack user, which she started in her late teens. Makes sense. That was the boom crack epidemic in the 80s. Also diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So, and by her own admissions, she'd done things in her life that she wasn't proud of. She regretted not being there for her parents when they passed away because of her drug use. So I'll give you the spoiler. She was one of our first JISH clients, and she's been there for about a year, and she's been clean for over 9 months. Awesome, right? And she's doing quite well. But when we first started reaching out to her after the initial referral from Rikers, she was reluctant and suspicious, understandably. So when she accepted our housing offer, it was very unsmooth sailing for a while, for several months. And it wasn't until she connected with one of our case managers, and sometimes you have to change case managers to make the right fit. And it wasn't until she connected with Tracy that she sort of started to blossom and to come out of her shell. So for a long time, again, there was the challenges in allowing us to engage her, but now she's really doing well. She's someone who is now, she was someone who was in special ed throughout her life and was told she was never going to amount to anything, that you're never going to be anything. Now she's working to get her high school diploma. Again, she's been clean for about 9 months. She's in an outpatient treatment program, doing quite well. Again, it really is about the dedicated efforts by the staff. This JISH thing is really phenomenal. The amount of attention that we, and I say we, I mean Fortune, CAMBA, and Urban Pathways, and Rebecca, and everyone else involved, give to these individuals really is setting them up for success. And I can't say enough how wonderfully I think this program is doing and how it's going to do. So, YG and our case manager Tracy have developed a strong and supportive connection. It's important to have that kind of case manager, the one who really gets our clients. So for example, last week in prep for this panel, I asked the case manager Tracy to describe to me what her sales pitch is when she's conducting the initial outreach interview to potential clients, and she told me, I don't do a sales pitch. I do an I am here for you pitch. So I really like what she said. I try to, and she added, I try to get to the heart of where their struggle is. She goes, get it? And I got it. So good. Thank you.
Hi. So our client was featured in the Marshall's project. So, which we will put the link so you guys can read the story. I'm just going to talk a little bit about who he is and how he's doing. So he's 54 with a long history of cycling in and out of jail for lower level offenses. He went to jail 13 times for a total of 348 days, and he was in the homeless 40 times. His history of homelessness dates back to 27 years. For whatever reason, his history is substance abuse and mental health. He was housed on February 26, 2016. During that period of time, there was some distrust because for him it was like, there has to be something there. Why are you, giving me an apartment? Why do you need to see me so many times during the month? And so it took a while before he got to trust the work of the staff. I think one instance where that trust became obvious was when one day on a weekend he called the case manager and said, I lost my keys. How am I going to go into my apartment? And the case manager said, well, meet me at the site because I'm going to give you a copy of the keys. For him, that is a Saturday. This is your personal time, and you are going to come all the way from the Bronx to Brooklyn to give me a copy of my keys. And I think that really broke the ice. He relapsed a couple of times. The last time he went to a 28-day rehab, and he said, the apartment where I am is not conducive to me staying clean. Can you please move me? We had one vacancy, so we did move him to the new apartment, and since then he's just doing great. His apartment is clean. I mean, every time that they come back to describe how he has all his different hats hanging in different places, and how organized and clean, and how proud is of having his place, it really makes up for some of the other struggles that we have with other clients, because with other clients we have, we're still trying to engage them and to make them feel safe and secure in their places. So if you guys want to read about his story, and there is an audio of him talking about how now that he has a place to live, he's secure. He wants to reconnect with his family and get his GED. So that's the story.
So, like it was said by Ian, there's multiple wild stories in terms of our clients, but we also have a success story where we've actually had a client who had a history of homelessness, substance use for over 23 years. His drug of choice was heroin. He had been in multiple treatment programs. Some he completed, others he did not complete. During the time of his substance use, he's made poor decisions, and substance use, and then you get involved with the legal system because of your poor decisions. It kind of breaks that level of trust between that particular person and their family. So it actually created barriers into where the trust factor was actually gone. This client actually was sent to a drug treatment court. He was referred to the Fortune Society through DOH, but he's part of DANI, which is the District Attorney of New York, the Alternative to Incarceration program. And when we received him, he was in that program, but he was also residing at a Phoenix house for, I believe it was over 13 months. However, client came into the program, he met with us, he met with his case manager, we were able to move him, he's actually employed. One of the things I do want to say, and a lot of people don't understand this, but because he was separated from his family, he was in and out of incarceration, he also had a son who, he was paying child support to, and while he was incarcerated, the child support really didn't stop. So when he came out, he still had the arrears of child support that he actually had to pay. Anyhow, at this point, we referred him to our family advocacy program. He worked with his case manager in order to help him to kind of get a payment plan to pay those arrears, but he's doing exceptionally well. We actually did an interview with the Robin Hood Foundation, I think it was last week, and we utilized him as the person of choice to go visit the home because he's doing exceptionally well. And one of the things that we shared with him, he was paying child support for a child that he hadn't seen in over 9 to 10 years. We just found out last week that I think it was on Saturday, he had his first visit with his son, who is 19 years old, for the first time in 9 years. And I mean, that just speaks volume into how this person really turned their life around to make better decisions. He's now a supervisor working for the Parks Department. He now has a great relationship with his family, who's also a support system in terms of his siblings. So, like I said, that's phenomenal. Yeah.
So the wow for me is that when I first took over responsibility for oversight of Mache's role in JISH, my colleague told me that that often when people are offered housing through this program, their first response is to burst into tears. And so for me, I think that that's extraordinarily emotional and a reminder of how fundamental and critical this work is, because it comes down to a home following years of a lot of hardship. So I appreciate very much all of the partners here and the opportunity to be a part of that.
Yes, thank you. Me too. That was always what was so inspiring about going to these meetings. We were talking bureaucratic and timing and paperwork and and then somebody would come forward with it's this distrust, and you hand them the set of keys, and it's, wait, for me? No way, not for me, right? But and then when they kind of cautiously will go with you to see the apartment, and you really leave them there with the set of keys, the emotional response is incredible. Talk about engagement tool. You don't need a TV, right?
Yeah, you don't need it.
So questions from the audience. We have a few more minutes. Yes.
I just want to ask, regarding the Fuse project, what were the character? Did you look into the characteristics and background and criminal records of those who seem to succeed in housing as opposed to those who kind of wandered off for various reasons?
So, not really. We didn't have the means to look into the arrest records and all of that. But there's lots on criminogenics, and I'm sure there are people here who could talk better than me about this, but the risk of reoffending is often quite low. And once you have the stability, I mean, often, I think, it was either Rebecca or Jennifer mentioned that homeless people are often arrested for things that we do in private because we have a home, right?
No, I
So
understand that, but in other words,
just retention.
Ones who are retained is wonderful, but then we really need to know the ones who were not retained, what were their needs, what were their characteristics, what were their issues. Of course, someone who's been arrested multiple times for turnstile jumping is one kind of person. Someone who's been arrested for dealing drugs and doing all kinds of other kind of more complicated crimes.
I think what you're
is another story.
what you're asking about gets to one of our interests in our evaluation is looking at what subpopulations among the GISH clients succeed versus others, and looking at some of their characteristics from their criminal justice involvement and other characteristics.
It's like some kind of burnout factor too, in the sense that, like, you have 56-year-old, a 40-some-odd-year-old, like, have they kind of like more or less used up all their energy and are ready to take their tap shoes off?
We hope to learn a lot more about that.
Yeah.
Great. Yes.
When you were talking about, I think it was a few people who were not eligible for benefits and therefore couldn't stay in the program. Right?
There were three.
There were three, okay. The reason because they were not eligible for benefits, I mean, what did you do then? Just like say, bye-bye, sorry, I picked the wrong person.
But I think the three were all in shelters, so we worked with the shelter case managers. I know in at least one of those cases, the person was having some, and this was pre-November 2016, having some immigration issues.
Yeah.
And he was just in and out, and in and out, and in and out so much that it was hard to get him to connect. That was, in the end, he didn't have benefits, but he was also refusing services and things like that.
This program is 100% city tax levy funded. So they're not applying for Section 8 vouchers, for example.
Okay. And is there a projection of when somebody would leave the program? I mean, you have one gentleman who is actually now a supervisor and stuff. Is there a point where they're going to either make too much money or be in the program too long where they'll have to exit?
No. No, we will continue working with the individual until they decide that they actually want to leave the program. But I actually do want to address you in terms of the clients who have been rearrested. One of the things about the JISH program that's unique is we continuously work with the client. So if they're rearrested, one of the things we look at and see as to, again, why they were rearrested, whether it was something with petty larceny. And a lot of the rearrests are, again, low-level concerns in terms of jumping the turnstile, picking up. We had a client who every time he got arrested, we know he went in the store to shoplift shampoo and conditioner and sold it to the local people in the community. But we still actually work with them and try to place them in programs in terms of programs that deal with people who actually steal. We look at their service plans and see how we need to kind of readjust it to kind of focus on their legal issues in terms of returning to the Department of Corrections, because our goal is to reduce the level of recidivism. So we actually address it. We don't just say, okay, you're arrested, so you're no longer in the program. We typically hold their apartment if they're rearrested for 90 days and sometimes longer, depending on the dates that they're going to be released. And one of the things also, we talked about good stories, but a lot of times, we have challenging clients. It is very difficult to deal with this population. And I always say, when the client returns back to the program and wants to meet with their caseworker, that's progress in itself, because the client doesn't have to come back to the program, and they frequently do.
Yes, in the back.
I was hoping you could speak a little bit about the peer specialist and how that differs from the case manager and engagement.
Okay, so the peer specialists are actually certified in that particular area, and they really focus on substance use. But our peer specialists, again, they talk with the clients and look and see what barriers have presented itself to causing them to relapse. And I'll give you an example. We know that summertime, what are we all going to do? We're going to go on picnics. We're going to engage with folks who are drinking and smoking and doing things that, they possibly shouldn't be doing. And one of the things is our peer specialist actually speaks with them, talks about those barriers. If a client does happen to relapse, they're looking at different detox programs, 28-day programs to put that client in, and then speaking with them on a weekly basis to find out how they're doing. In addition to supporting them in terms of escorting them to multiple appointments that may need to be made in terms of HRA. A lot of our clients may not know how to read or fill out an application. So they're that level of support services in conjunction with the case managers. The case managers are actually responsible for creating those service delivery plans that we spoke about, identifying areas and goals that will most benefit that client into becoming self-sufficient in terms of living independently, where they're checking on them on a monthly basis, reviewing the service plans with them, linking them to different services within the community, within Fortune Society, and then following up with that particular person and looking and completing a quarterly service plan review to see how well they're actually doing. So the recovery peer specialist and the case manager work hand in hand. It's a level of communication, because where you have the substance component of treatment, that recovery peer specialist is actually working cohesively with the case manager and other outside providers in terms of networking, getting them into services needed.
It's a level of assistance that I think it will not be possible without someone else, because when you go to an appointment at HRA, if anybody has experience going to HRA, that's an entire day process, right?
Yes.
So if you have 30 clients that need that level of establishing benefits, it's not only one appointment. It's you have to go for follow up. You have to bring documentation. By having a case manager that is out of the office all the time to be able to get benefits in place, the other clients are going to suffer. Mm-hmm. So the level of of assistance by that peer worker is very important in this program, because there is so much intensive follow-up that needs to be done. The requirements are a little bit too intensive, even for the level of staff that the current staffing pattern that we have right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Given the current success, I was wondering if somebody could speak to sustainability of the program and also scaling as it grows.
So I can address this sustainability piece. The investment for this project, which we're considering a pilot project, was made by the District Attorney of New York. So it was a $9 million investment. And part of the emphasis for our evaluation is to document our impact so that we can advocate for baseline funding in perpetuity. And so that's our sustainability plan, is to really do a rigorous evaluation, which is why we decided to do the randomized control group at the beginning, which presents its ethical challenges at the outset, but we were committed to doing a rigorous evaluation design so that we could really demonstrate that this is making a difference, not only for individual people's lives and outcomes, but also for citywide system impact and cost savings. And so once we have results from that, we'll leverage those in order to make the case to the city that it should be baselined. And then the other thing, and maybe you want to talk about the caps and vulnerability.
Sure. So, that is the beauty of these FUSE initiatives, is that the outcomes, the qualitative, quantitative, and budgetary outcomes are so impressive that we find that this kind of program appeals to what we say both sides of the aisles. Like, it's any person in charge of the budget, whether it's an elected official or not, your bean counter at OMB, it's pretty clear that this works and it saves on all levels, right? So that's great that we're doing more and more evaluations. I think another piece is that a lot of people up here in some capacity have been involved in a coordinated entry system that is being developed in the city of New York per HUD's mandate. HUD is mandating that every continuum of care in the country have a coordinated entry system. And in New York City, that's not an easy task because we have 70,000 plus homeless people and multiple intake sites and multiple shelter systems, honestly, right? But we are slowly and very thoughtfully, we as the collective group here in the city of New York, in creating a coordinated entry system. Again, it's taking that 70,000 people who are in need of housing and trying to figure out who are our top couple hundred most in need of supportive housing. That's where we're starting, is with supportive housing. And so I think this JISH work is really informing that CAPS system, coordinated entry and placement system. And we are first out of the box in this, in a way, in using data and other means of determining vulnerability and getting those folks who need it most housing as quickly as possible.
I just want to ask about the financing. Obviously, everyone's talking about the outreach and all of the real staff-intensive, labor-intensive work that's required. So, how is the financing, as in other words, the supportive housing stipend from, say, OMH is, not a lot.
Yeah.
So, what are what extra is being put in here?
Yeah, I'll start it, and then Rebecca, you can finish it. That there was, this is unique. It's a funding source all of its own. There was a special RFP that came out, and it's all city tax levy money, different from OMH licensed housing, for example.
Right, and lost it. The tenants, again, it's a unique funding stream. The tenants are paying the 30% as they do in others, and then with the contracted monies that our three agencies get, that provides the stipend.
So they're getting a rental stipend and service money as one package per tenant per JISH. Yeah.
Is there any incentive as this program goes on and the housing market is going up and up, especially in New York, to raise the levels of allotment for housing units?
I think as time goes by, that's something we're going to have to look at. Since rent up was a little bit slower, there is, hopefully we can utilize some of that money ongoing.
And also I'll say that with the new New York City 1515 RFP that came out in February, for the first time ever, service money and rental subsidy are separate. They're not part of the same contract, so that rental amounts can go up with fair market value as needed or desired. Last question.
Did you consider any other models besides scattered site renting from private landlords?
No. It was, when we got the 120 beds, it was intended to be scattered site. Should we move forward with more beds, we'd consider maybe some cluster site or some other options.
That has to do with timing. They got the money, they had to get the money out. Maybe Rebecca and Jennifer can't say this, but they got to get it out. And new construction, as people in the room know, can take 3 to 5 years. There's probably a way to get this in the pipeline in the future, as they've heard me advocate for many a time. But I think timing is of the essence on a lot of this. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you to